Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I'm Bill, the company's expert, and welcome. If you are looking for a job, if you are looking to improve your career, you've come to the right place. We're going to talk about everything to do with doing job interviews, with doing resumes, applying for jobs, discovering jobs, etc., negotiating salary, all that good stuff. And welcome to Onion YT, the latest member of my YouTube channel. Thank you, Onion YT. You guys are awesome, and I'd like to do a shout out to my members. So to start off, I wanted to do something because a lot of you guys were asking questions about the most recent video that I put out there. Let's see if I can get this working. This one. Okay, I put out this video just over a week ago. Do not say this, and it was a list of things that are dangerous to say in a job interview. And I got a really good response to that video, but I got a lot of questions, people saying, how come you can't say this? What part of this is dangerous? And I wanted to address two things. In that video, there were a group of things that I said where you were asking about the job. Something like, so what's the pay like? Do I get vacation days? How much vacation do I get? How long till I get a promotion? Things like this. Are those things bad to say in themselves? No, they're not. The problem is that a lot of candidates do it wrong, okay? Because if you're not careful and you ask a ton of questions like that in a job interview to the recruiter or hiring manager, you got to be careful that you don't come off as if you're only out for yourself, you don't care about helping them at all, and you're only looking out for yourself. Now, I know this is stupid because you should look out for yourself. I mean, the whole point of doing this is that, we need money to live, and you need to get a job, not because you enjoy it necessarily. Hopefully, you can find something you like, but it's through necessity. You need to do this and get something out of it. It has to work for you. We all know this, but you are trying to make a good first impression in a job interview. And let me tell you, from being on the other side of the table a few times, when you have a candidate that comes in and they seem like they don't really care about the company, they don't really care about the job itself, all they care is about getting everything they possibly can out of it. I want the most salary, I want the most perks, I want the most vacation, I want all the privileges, I want everything. I'm going to get as much as I possibly can, and that's all I care about. Okay. The problem is that if you make that your first impression, it's a big turnoff. And if they suspect that that's the only reason you're here, you don't really care about the job, you don't care about the company, you don't care about the work itself, you're just doing it to get purely, a reward for yourself, and that's it, that can disqualify you. So that was what I was trying to convey in that video. Most people got it, some people didn't, so I wanted to clarify that. The other series of comments that I got from that video was I listed saying things like, I'm a team player, I'm a self-starter, I'm results-oriented, things like this. Are those things bad in themselves? Are those things you shouldn't say? No, not necessarily. However, they are buzzwords. They are meaningless management and business jargon. They are cliches. They've been so overused. And most recruiters, the way recruiters are trained, if you're dealing with a recruiter who has formal training, okay, most of them do. Some of them don't, but most of them do. Okay, the way they train recruiters, especially these days, is the attitude that people can say whatever. People can lie through their teeth and say whatever. But what recruiters are trying to do is trying to find evidence that what they're saying is correct. Okay. So for example, instead of saying, oh, I have great communication skills, recruiters are looking for evidence that you have great communication skills. That's kind of what they're trying to do. Okay. Possibly in some extremely low level, entry level jobs, if you say I have good communication skills, they might go, okay, and they just accept that at face value. I mean, everything happens some of the time, but usually that's not the case. Usually they're going to look for things. So if you use these buzzwords, okay, I'm a self-starter, they're not going to take that at face value. They're going to just delete that, they're going to forget that, and they're going to look for evidence. Okay, so padding what you say with too many buzzwords is a red flag. So that's what I was trying to convey. Most people got that, some people didn't, but I got some questions about it. So there you go. So hopefully that makes sense. And before we go to questions, we're gonna look at some polls that I took this last week for you guys. You guys filled in some polls, and then we're gonna go to questions. So polls since last week. A week ago, a poll was the worst part of job search is, and there was a bunch of options, and you guys said waiting for a response is the worst part of job search. I was surprised by that. The other options were discovering jobs, filling in applications, and interviews. So really, you guys find that waiting for a response is actually worse than doing interviews or discovering the really good jobs to apply to? That's surprising. I got a little tip there that can hopefully help a lot of people. At least it'll take the edge off the unpleasantness of waiting for a response. While you're waiting for a response, apply to a bunch more jobs. Go to more interviews, okay? Never stop and wait by the phone, okay? Because most things, just by the way the stuff goes, the phone's not going to ring, okay? It's the same with sales. It's the same with job search. You know, most leads that you have don't pan out. Some do, okay? But most more won't pan out than they will, okay? So the way you do it is you keep busy. You keep looking forward. You keep applying to the next opportunity and not stopping to wait by the phone for this wonderful interview you just did to see if they get back to you, okay? At least if you do this, or if you can bring yourself to do more of that, it'll take the edge off the unpleasantness of having to wait for a response. Okay, so hopefully that helps. That may not help everybody, but that'll help a lot of people, hopefully. I've worked with a lot of students and things on that, and that helped them. Okay, next poll was your worst job interview involved. And there were some options here: being insulted, another person losing their temper with or at you, being stood up, or what you guys voted for, a rude interviewer. So the worst job interview that you did involved a rude interviewer. That did not surprise me. There are a lot of really painfully unprofessional recruiters out there. People that their power has gone to their head. They're used to people artificially being nice to them, far beyond what they deserve for how competent they are and how professional they are. And a few years of that, it goes right to your head. And, you feel that, I don't need to be polite to people because I'm that important. And this is unfortunately what makes job search for a lot of people so insufferable, is a lot of people that behave like that. And that's quite a lot of recruiters that do that. Hiring managers too. I mean, it's not just recruiters that are that are unprofessional, but a lot of hiring managers too. There are a lot of good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones. And unfortunately, the bad ones are always looking for good employees because no good employees will stay and work with them. So when you do a job search, you have a disproportionately higher chance of encountering these idiots who are unprofessional, they're rude, they're incompetent, and that's a really unfortunate aspect of this. If that's happening to you right now, you have my deepest sympathy. Don't worry, after you deal with so many people like that, there are some good people out there, and it's just a matter of getting past these idiots so that you can deal with some competent people that treat you like a human being. Next poll was, I call the document describing my work history a 62% of you said resume. 38% of you said CV. I know it varies around the world. Okay. However, in the West, or at least in North America, resume is the document that you use to apply for jobs. It has mainly your work experience, whereas CV is the academic document that has, if you're an academic, you've maybe written books, you've published papers, you've done journal articles. That's where you give like a sort of bibliography of your professional publishing that you've done. Okay, that's the difference between a CV and a resume. I know in Europe, other places in the world, they sort of garble those terms, they interchange them, and they use CV to mean the document with the experience on it. But it doesn't really matter what you say. as long as you're using the lingo that people understand locally. Okay, next poll. Would you rather do 5 rounds of job interviews for a slightly higher paying job, or do 1 job interview for a slightly lower paying job? Well, most people, 67% of you guys said you'd rather do 5 rounds of job interviews for a slightly higher paying job. That did not surprise me. People like to complain. They like to piss and moan about, doing job interviews. But at the end, if it pays off, it's worth it. But I agree with you that, if you're doing an executive job, yes, 5 rounds is normal. You can expect that. If you're doing a lower level job, like an entry level job, why would you need 5? That's ridiculous. Why would you need 2 or 3 rounds? That's ridiculous too. Okay, next poll. How often do recruiters or hiring managers end up ghosting you? Okay, we all know what ghosting is. That's where, you're talking to them and they're talking back. You're sending emails and messages and DMs back and forth. And all of a sudden, poof, they drop off the face of the planet. They don't return messages or calls or anything. That's ghosting. You guys said, 56% of you said over 75% of the time you get ghosted by recruiters. That does not surprise me. That's how they deal with people. This is one example of how unprofessional they are. Nowhere else have I seen in any area of business where it's okay to behave like that. Next poll. You were completely turned off by the people at your job interview, but you took the job anyway, and it turned out to be good. Has this happened to you? 85% of you said no. That surprised me. Okay. I asked what topic I should cover next, and the winner was, how did you handle a difficult situation? 3 example answers. So I'm going to do a video on that soon. And finally, last poll, it says, I hate being asked this the most. And the winner was, why should we hire you? Okay, so you guys hate being asked. That's one of the easiest questions. It's interesting because a lot of people that leave comments, I've noticed the same comment left over and over and over again on my YouTube videos, which is what some people claim is an answer to that is to say, why should you hire me? Because I need a job or because I need money. It's like, wrong. Don't say that. You misunderstand the question. They're not saying, why should we hire you? They're saying, why should we hire you as opposed to somebody else? We could hire anyone we want, but why should we hire you? Okay. So if you're new, if you're green, if you're younger, you haven't done too many job searches, that's what they're asking. Okay. So this is where you got to say how you are better than the other candidates, even though you don't know any of the other candidates. You like that? Basically, the way you answer that question is you talk about how you meet the requirements, okay? And you do meet the requirements as evidenced by the fact that they called you in for an interview, okay? If you didn't meet the requirements on paper, if they looked at your resume and they came to the conclusion that this person doesn't have any of the stuff we're looking for, this person is not a contender, they wouldn't have invited you to the job interview, okay? So the way you answer that question is if they say, why should we hire you? Or why should we hire you? You say, well, for a start, you're looking for, as I understand it, you're looking for somebody who has this. Well, I have that. You're also looking for somebody that has this. I have that too. And I have this and this and this. I got 2 years experience this. I've got familiarity with this, operating this piece of equipment. I've got this educational qualification. So it seems like I would be a good fit. That's why you should hire me, because I seem to fit this really, really well. And on top of that, I'm passionate about it or something like that. Okay. So that's hopefully an answer to a lot of people that have been leaving that question or that answer. Okay. So this is a Q&A. So we're going to go over to you guys. Let me see here. I always say this. I'm going to try and keep track of where I am here in the feed. Dan Fleming. Dan, you are awesome. Thank you very much. You are awesome. You are improving yourself. You are working on your job search ability. So sooner or later, you're going to come out on top. How do you say this? Zet? Z-E-T? I'm Canadian, so I say Zet. I got a really squeaky chair. Hopefully you can't hear that. Zet says, I was asked to resign yesterday. How to respond in interview if I would be asked about that? Well, it depends what you want to do. Do you want to resign? And the reasons, like, I know that in tough economic times, they can ask people, they want to downsize their workforce, but most managers do not want to fire people or lay people off unless they have to. I mean, hey, it takes all kinds. You get some psychopaths out there, but most people hate it. It's the worst part of being a manager. So what they do is they go to their employees, they canvass their employees and say, look, you're close to retirement. Would you like to take an early retirement, or would you like to go half-time? Or, I know you've been talking about leaving. I know you're not really thrilled with this job. Would you be open to resigning so I don't have to lay off somebody else? That's a common thing. Okay. Now, how to respond? I mean, I can't tell you what to say. It depends what you want to do and what the situation is. But if you're asking what would be the appropriate method to respond, I would do it in person. Okay. If this is a person that's in your building, like in your location, that's asking you this, I would, before I send an email and put it in writing, I would go and talk to them. Okay, if they had an office or something. What sometimes is a good way to do it is if you compose an email, but you don't actually send it. So you've written your email with your official response, but before you send it, you go and you talk to the person face to face and you give your answer. Okay, you get their reaction if there is one. And then after you do that in person, then you go back to your desk or whatever and you hit send. Okay, that can be a good way to deal with some of these formal situations. Gustavo says, I have my second interview on Monday next week. Any advice on how to request for time off with my current employer? Maybe I shouldn't say this, but maybe just say you're sick. I don't know, Like, what's the alternative? You could say, I'd like some time off for a personal matter. You could say that, okay? Alternatively, you could say, I like time off to go and interview for another job. That would be a bad idea, okay? So don't say that. So if you can get away with saying, I'd like to take a personal day, or I have some personal business to take care of, something like that. Don't mention what you're doing. Don't say anything that would put suspicion on you, perhaps dealing with another company or seeking employment elsewhere. Okay. To me, that's pretty obvious, but if you have a particularly friendly boss, you may feel a personal temptation to tell them out of courtesy. I wouldn't. It's not the best thing for you for a variety of reasons. Conch77 says, good morning. I did my third interview yesterday, and I can say your advice has certainly helped me get this far. Excellent. Based on your negotiation tips or your negotiating tips, I am ready for them if they make me an offer, because when I was asked about salary expectations, I didn't give an answer and got HR to tell me the salary range. Excellent. That can sometimes put you in a position of power. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that whatever range they give you, there's always a chance that that's not their honest range. They could say whatever they want. Okay, that's sometimes what they do, right? So good, you got a range, but maybe the range goes higher and they just didn't tell you that. So yeah, good stuff. That's great to hear. I will be shooting for the upper end of the range. Yes, of course. How do you say this? Aquascapeng? It just rolls off the tongue. Mr. Aquascapeng. Mr. and Ms. Johnson hyphen Aquascapeng. How do you write punclication section in a CB? I don't know. I don't know what a punlication. Publication? Okay, there we go. Publication section of CV. Well, listen, here's what you do, okay? Can I? No, I can't do this in real time, but here's what you do. Here's what I would do, okay? Go to, not Google, but Bing, okay? Because Bing, at least at the moment, has a better image search than Google in the sense that you can click on the image and it doesn't take you to the website. It takes you to the actual image, okay? Go to Bing, so bing.com, and then it's like a search box like Google, and then type in CV or CV examples, okay? Or CV example. And then do a search and then hit images. So you do an image search. And what will happen is on your screen will pop up just a ton of examples of CVs, right? Like visually, what they look like, okay? And just copy the style, okay? If you're doing it in the APA format, there's a specific sort of list of requirements for that, but if you're not bound by that, you could do it any way you want, really, but you'll see some great examples, okay? And that will give you an idea of what it should look like, okay? Not every single example will be necessarily 100% correct, but you're seeing like dozens or hundreds of examples, so you can flip through them and you can see like they all have this in common. So that should clear that question up. MCR says, last week I had an interview with the HM, I guess hiring manager, and said that the interview wasn't as important as the test. It lasted less than 15 minutes. Okay. Is that might be for like a lower level job, I guess, or a technical job. Konstantinos, I'm for a business development sales internship. I'm still a student in university and have little experience. How do I go about aggressively cold email message on LinkedIn for an internship? Well, first of all, I go into great detail in my course. My Get Hired course goes into all the detail you'd ever want with examples and templates about that. I do have some free videos on my channel. You could just check those out because I do talk about that. If you go to my YouTube channel page, I've got a playlist. I can't remember the title, but if you scroll down, it's like all the steps. How do you discover, companies? How do you discover the hiring managers? How do you contact the hiring managers? What you say, there's a playlist for that. So check that out. To try and answer that very quickly here, I would not use emails. Emails are notoriously easy to ignore. Okay. What I would do, or what I recommend, is that you connect with the hiring managers. Don't send them messages when you're not connected. Okay, I know that like LinkedIn offers that way of communicating with people. I don't know you, but I'm going to send you a message. In my experience, that's kind of self-defeating because unless you know the person wants to talk to you, why waste the effort and sometimes the money, because they charge you, I believe, for that service. Why waste that on them, right? That's what cheap salespeople do. They just sort of blast out thousands and thousands of spam messages to people that are not interested, right? The right way to do it, in my opinion, and in my experience, I've built a business like this, and I've also been doing this for years, is to contact the person, okay? Say, can we connect? You send a little message. And then some people will respond and connect with you. Some people won't. Okay. Now, of the ones that respond, you might have done this to hundreds of people over several weeks. Of the people who respond, maybe I think I would get about, of CEOs that I've done that with, I'd get about 30% response. So about 30% of them would connect with you. So if you do this to 100 people, 30 people would respond to you and connect. Now, of those 30 people that have said, yes, I'd like to connect with you, then you send a message. At this point, it doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to have a special account. And, you use the word aggressively. The key is when you talk to them, you don't want to be aggressive. Okay. You just say, look, hey, just so you know, I have this. Okay. I'm a engineer. I'm a technician. I'm a graphic designer, whatever you are. If you're ever looking for that, please let me know. Here's the problem I solve. I'd love to work with you. Thank you very much. Have yourself a great day. Just something like that. People don't want to be hard sold something. You know what I mean? Most people do not respond well to that, but they will respond to a very professional, sort of low pressure kind of thing, saying, look, I do this. I do it really well. If ever you're looking for that, please let me know. You have my contact information. I'd love to work with you. And if they're not looking for it, they're not looking for it. But if they happen to be looking for it, that'll be another subset of people. They just happen to be looking for that right now. Whatever it is, whatever you do, they'll say, hey, actually, yeah, let's talk. Okay, so that's kind of the general approach to doing that. Okay, so for internship, you say here you're wanting to do this for an internship. The great thing about internships is that most people don't do this method to try and get an internship. They stand in line and wait their turn. They apply as an applicant, okay? But what you can do is you can distinguish yourself. You can elevate yourself above the crowd, because very few people have the initiative to actually do this, to reach out and say, hi, I'm a student. I've got a background in this. I've got great marks. I'm really looking to do an internship in this because I really love that area or whatever. I'd love to do an internship. I know about your company. Your company does great work in this area. And if ever you guys are looking to take on an internship, please think of me. Thank you very much. Something like that. Very low pressure. And the idea is that what they'll do is when a hiring manager, like a general manager or a division manager, gets a message like this, they go, hey, I like this person's initiative and passion. They seem to be really professional. They seem to be really easy to deal with. We're always looking for dedicated, passionate employees that love doing this kind of work. This person is looking for an internship. If they have an internship to give you, you've presented yourself in a very favorable way, right, to the right person who has the authority to say, hey, yes, enroll this person, or at least bring them in. I want to talk to them. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of how that stuff works. Here, this feed just skipped. Joseph Morawski says, what if they ask you about your experience in a certain field, but you have no actual experience? Now, this is where preparation comes in, Joseph, because there's very few things that they can ask you that technically you have zero experience, okay? Like, a common question that I get from students is they're applying for their first career job. They've never had a career job in their lives because they've just come out of school, or maybe they're in school and school is going to end soon, like they're in university or college or trade school, and it's coming up to the end, and they're starting to apply for jobs. And their big fear is, I have no career experience. I have schooling, but no experience. So how do I answer these questions about experience? Especially pointed questions where they say, why should we hire you when you don't have any experience? And the answer to that is, well, I do have experience. I have experience. And then you go over what you've done. I have experience meeting deadlines. I have experience working in groups. I have experience, needing to have a very good work ethic, completing assignments on time. Like all the stuff you do in school, you actually, when you break it down, you've done presentations, you've been immersed in this topic for years, okay? Maybe you've taken a tour of a company that does that kind of work, maybe, whatever. You have stuff you can say to that, right? And maybe you haven't had a career job in that field. Okay, let's say it's you're an apprentice plumber. You're coming out of trade school and you've never worked for a plumbing contractor before. And they're going to ask you, like, well, why should we hire you when you've never worked a trade before? You've just been in school. And you can say, well, look, first of all, I've done the work. I've got top marks. I have experience doing plumbing at school. I have experience completing assignments, writing tests on it. I've also done the practical side of it in class, and I've succeeded in all the assignments that we've had to do where we actually do the work. And like you can break down all the things that you do. And in addition, maybe you've had casual jobs, okay? Maybe it's not as a plumber, but you worked at McDonald's or you worked at, whatever. You've done other jobs. You say like, look, I've had experience working as an employee, and having to conform to a work schedule, having to answer to a boss, having to find out what the boss's expectations are and meet them, having to, account for myself, having to complete assignments on time and communicate effectively, having to work with other people, and interoperate and work as a group, having to resolve conflict with people, having to resolve conflict with your boss. I've done all of that. I've held down a job for a while. So all the constituent skills are there. So it really doesn't seem like much of a stretch for me to do this. You can talk about all that stuff. You've got a lot to say. So just because you don't have any actual experience doing that absolute precise thing, you can still speak to all the constituent things that they're looking for, okay, and put their mind at ease that none of those things are going to be a concern or an issue with you. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, Joseph. That's actually a very good question. Garrett, how do I get a job without knowing anyone? As the age-old phrase goes, it's not what you know, but who you know. How do I navigate this if I don't have a lot of friends in companies? Excellent question, Garrett. You're taking your steps into a bigger world. Okay. Here's the answer. About 5 minutes ago, somebody asked a question about how do I contact, it was Constantino said, how do I aggressively cold email or message people on LinkedIn for an internship? Okay. Most people don't happen to know people in every company or every place they could apply to. Okay, that's normal. Even if you knew 1,000 people, that's still far, far too little to just contact a random company and, you happen to know someone there who's also in a position of power and knows you well enough that they would just hire you. Yeah, that's pretty rare, okay, for most people. And neither is that necessary. So the way this works is that you meet the person. Okay, you contact them, you have some kind of dealings with them. They get to see a little bit of you, okay? Even if it's just sending a message back and forth. And then at that point, okay, in a sense, you know each other. You've had dealings, okay? So in the last example, we were talking about LinkedIn, and I had said, you go out and you contact hiring managers that are in your city, in your location. Most people live in cities. If you live out in the country somewhere, just your region, okay, your surrounding region. In that surrounding region or in that city, all the organizations or companies that are in your industry that would employ people with your skills, okay? You can find all of those, and then now that you have a list of these employers, you can then use LinkedIn to look inside those companies and see the individuals inside those organizations and figure out who are the decision makers. Okay. Usually you go up to the top. You wouldn't start with some shipping clerk. You would talk to a divisional vice president. That's the person you would connect with. They're also the best people to communicate with, because number one, they've usually got good communication skills and they have decision-making authority to hire people. Also, their job involves taking questions from the public, okay? This is the thing. A lot of executives, a lot of people higher up, the decision makers, who also happen to be hiring managers, they, like me, I'm speaking about people that were in, like my job. Your job is to take unsolicited queries from the public, okay? Not the shipping clerk. The shipping clerk doesn't deal with that. Some person contacts a shipping clerk and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about your company. And they're like, what? Who are you? What? I don't do that. Well, what do you want? No, I don't do that. Goodbye. That doesn't work. You talk to middle managers, like functional managers, the department head for marketing or operations, a shop manager. They're not going to answer that either. That's not what their job involves. But people above that, their job involves doing that. The person contacting them could be a journalist doing an article about the company. It could be a supplier. It could be a sort of institutional customer. It could be a vendor. It could be a regulator. It could be any other player in the industry. It could be a potential business partner. So you don't know. So you field all those queries, right? That's part of your job to respond to those. Okay, if you ignore those, usually bad things happen, because although, a lot of them are duds, they don't go anywhere. Just like when you apply for jobs, a lot of them don't go anywhere. A lot of your leads end up not working out, but some do. And you won't get the job if you don't apply, right? So that's how networking works. You reach out to people, and some people won't respond, but some people will. And then of the people that will, okay, you send them a message. And you say, hey, I'm here. I can do this. I love your company. I know you do this work. If ever you're looking for this, let me know. Okay. And like I said before, of the people that have contacted you, that respond to you, and that are good at communicating, okay, some of those people just aren't hiring right now. They're not looking for somebody with your skills. So they're nice people, but there will not be some kind of employment arrangement that comes out of it. Okay, so usually they just don't respond, not because they're nasty or anything, but just because they don't happen to be looking for somebody with your talents right now. However, through statistical probability, some people will be. At any moment, somebody out there is looking for somebody with your skills. Okay, right now, somebody's looking for someone with your skills right now in your region. Okay. But you don't know where they are. It's not they haven't advertised this. And if they have, you haven't heard of it, right? So of those people, now we further refined this, of those people, okay, they are thinking, one of the things I got to do is I got to hire another employee to work in this department. It's number 150 on my task list, right? I got to get with HR. I've got to figure out what we're going to do there and go through the process. I've got to attend job interviews. I've got to approve the job posting that goes out. All that work, I got to do all of that. That's on my list, right? And then your message lands in their lap. You say, hey, I got the thing that you're looking for. I happen to have that. I love your company. I'd love to work for you. And they think, hey, this might save me some work. Let's talk, because if this person works out, and then they look promising, and then we do all our background checks and all that, and they check out, I could save myself a ton of work and a lot of expense for the company. That's how it works in most businesses. Okay. Obviously, in some places like government or some very large organizations, then you don't quite go through this. It's a little more formal. But the vast majority of people do not work in large organizations. The vast majority of people work in small and mid-sized organizations where this sort of thing happens. If you're a person that has only ever worked in large organizations, what you're hearing now from me probably sounds like, no, that doesn't happen. It does, okay? Do your research. You don't have to take my word for it. This is how it works. I've just built a consulting business doing this. It's really how things go. So that's what you would do, right? And that's networking. Now, did you know these people before? No, you didn't. You reached out and met them. And the way it works is that when they contact you, it does not feel like a recruiter and a candidate who has applied. This feels like a referral, because somebody high up in the organization has invited you in to have a conversation about, let's see what your goals are, and what kind of person you are, and what your background is, and what you're looking to do, and let's see if that jives with the type of role that I might need to fill at my organization, right? It feels like a referral. that person has invited you in. You didn't say, I'm looking for a job. I'm applying for this job. You said, hey, I can do this. If ever you're looking, let me know. It's not an application. It's just a sort of bit of information. And they chose to act on it and invite you in. It's a little bit of a different dynamic. Okay, so that's the type of networking that I advocate. It's great for introverts like me. I mean, there's many other ways to network, but this is something I recommend for a lot of job seekers because it's so easy to do. It takes a little bit of work. You got to work at it. You got to build up a little bit of a network and then systematically do this. But I mean, it's so easy compared to some of the alternatives. And you don't have to make phone calls. You don't have to go to job interviews other than what someone has invited you to. And it's not even a job interview. It's like a coffee meeting at the local Starbucks or something. So hopefully that answers your question. Anyway, if any of that sounded interesting, do your own research on it. Okay, that's how this stuff works. Okay, this is how executives get jobs. And there's absolutely nothing stopping people at the mid-level or the low level from doing it too. The reason why less of them do it is because they're just unaware that this is a thing. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Michelle says, thank you for the great advice. How would you answer the question, how do you negotiate with difficult stakeholders? Well, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong answer for that other than just not yielding a bunch of red flags, like saying, I hate stakeholders, or, I don't know how to negotiate, or, you know what I mean? Like, aside from you putting your foot in your mouth, I don't think there's any wrong answer to that. What I would say if somebody asked me that is I'd say, well, listen, I negotiate the same way with difficult stakeholders that I do with anyone, which is just, you go in with a lot of preparation. You try and understand your position fully. Before you go in, you try and consider all the dimensions of any possible agreement. Okay, if you're just talking about price or there's other factors too, I would understand my position and what I'm prepared to do on all of those different dimensions. And I would go in armed with this knowledge. I would try and make it as amiable as possible, but knowing how far I will go and what I will accept, that informs where the conversation goes. And I never accept anything that doesn't make sense for me to do. And I mean, negotiation is a skill, and I'm trained in how to negotiate. So, I would do everything in my power to try and determine things like their reservation price and try and see if there's a zone of possible agreement where we can do it, and, how many factors to the deal. And to try and make the process as pleasant as possible for everybody. That's how I do these things. I mean, that would be my answer. I don't know if there's different people look for specific things and you have no control over that. There's some really crazy people that look for a lot of crazy things, and as a result, when you get to some of these non-standard questions, it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's about is this kind of what they were looking for? Are they looking for a tough negotiator that's going to really grind the adversary into the dirt and be really difficult and obstinate? Or are they looking for someone that, makes it a good experience because maybe you're negotiating with a customer and not an adversary? Maybe it's more of a, this person, you care about your long-term relationship with them. They're a repeat customer. So you don't want to piss them off and give them a terrible experience. You want them to want to come back and deal with you again. So you have to do it a different way. You have to make it a very pleasant process. And, it totally depends on the context, right? Now, is that the way you would negotiate with terrorists? Of course not, right? So it depends on the context, and it depends on the culture and what these people happen to be looking for that are asking the question. But just going into it blind, that's what I would say. Dan Fleming, how to answer what's the biggest project I worked on? Okay. When I have the feeling I don't have something truly big I can talk about for that employer. Well, okay. Something like that, like the obvious answer would be to say the biggest project you worked on. Like, I can't answer that for you. An alternative would be to say that, and then, like, because you do want to answer the question, but to sort of give it more weight, if there's something else that you've done that maybe wasn't quite as big, but it's scalable, like you could easily ramp it up, that might be worth saying too. That's what I would do. I mean, that's the type of question that, it's going to depend on what you've done, right? I can't really come up with any details for you. Who cares? 808, thanks. Hey, Daddy, thanks for your help. Cool, good. I've never been called that before, except by my children. But you're welcome. Next person. My issue is the interview. I get nervous and mess up. What is the best live practice I can have online to practice for an interview? Is there a particular company online? Okay, there's tons of HR companies that offer mock interviews as a service. Okay, usually for executives because it costs a bit of money. What they'll do is, they'll say, come in and we will help you improve your interviewing skills. We will do mock interviews with you. We will do pretend interviews with you, where we ask you everything under the sun, and then we will give you feedback. So it's two benefits. Number one is you get to practice, and number two is you get feedback from the other person on, their impression of how you did. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it's not. But there's many HR companies that offer this. In fact, I'd say almost all, certainly mid-size HR companies offer that service. Now, for people that are at sort of a lower level, that aren't at the executive level, in all honesty, you really don't need that. Like I've said numerous times, a friend or a family member will do just fine. If you can get like if the only people that you have access to are your, maybe your immediate family, your parents, maybe a sibling, or someone like that, that would be the obvious thing. Like, just say, look, can you help me do some pretend job interviews with me? Here, I'm going to give you a list of questions, and if you could treat this like a real job interview and just ask me these questions, and we're going to pretend this is real, and we're going to do this several times. Is that okay? And or a friend or something like that. You start off that way. Now, if you feel a little nervous doing it, good. It's good, because that's going to help make it more realistic. When you go to a real job interview, most people are nervous, right? And in fact, that's probably one of the biggest things that makes it challenging, right? Because you have to think on your feet, and you've got strangers staring at you, and you're in a sort of intimidating, unfamiliar place, and all this kind of stuff. So that actually simulates this quite well. Okay. The next step is if the other person is cooperative enough, if this friend or family member is cooperative enough, you can get them to compose the questions themselves. You tell them, look, take 5 minutes, go on the internet, go on Google or whatever, and you write the job interview questions, like what you think would be, appropriate, and you ask me them. So I haven't prepared for those particular questions. I don't know what you're going to ask. We're taking this to the next level. And then let's do this a couple of times, and then see how I do. And that will help you. And if you keep doing this, you do this for a week, or maybe even 2 weeks, every day, a few times, you will be a pro. You will be a master. You will walk into that job interview having been asked all these things. You've learned the easy way, you've learned the hard way, and you're prepared. Okay. So that's the best type of preparation that you can do if you don't want to spend money and get a professional to help you. That really, really does the world of good. Okay. Yes, it takes a bit of effort. It's a little bit intimidating, but it's a very, very good simulation of the real thing. And yes, I mean, if your friend or family member is in another, like they don't live in the same apartment or house or whatever as you, you could do it over the computer, I suppose, right? But it's not quite as good. It's better in person because you tend to be more nervous when the person is there. It's more real, So if you can do it in person, I highly recommend it. Marco, yeah, WKC champion. Yeah, I remember you. Bill, hi Bill. I started my new job 1 week ago, and I successfully landed an agreement with my manager today about remote working. Whoops. And people management. You are always awesome. Oh, well, congratulations. I'm glad it's working out there, Marco. Good job. Johnny Airplane. There's a great advice. Johnny Airplane. Johnny Downspout. There you go. Great advice. You're welcome, Johnny. MCR. Sorry, I didn't elaborate before. I did the test. How do I go about inquiring about the role? Do I follow up with HR or the hiring manager? I had an interview with each one. I would do both. Like if you have the contact information for both, I would contact them independently. Like if you contact the first person and they can't really tell you much, okay, I would contact the second person, either the hiring manager or the recruiter, and just say like whatever you're looking for, whatever type of information you're looking for. Okay, I mean, usually that stuff would be on the job posting, right? Like, the details of the role, right? Or you just, if it's a situation where they just expect you to know what that is, they say, oh, you're a sewage treatment attendant, and then they don't elaborate, right? Maybe just go to Google and Google that job description and see if it's like a known industry term or a standard role, and you might be able to find some stuff that describe it, and even the skills and qualities necessary to do it. That's what I would say. Here we go. Ice cold Wasim again. Hey, Mr. Bill, may I know if having good grades in school will be an advantage in getting hired, or is it not worth it to sacrifice my time to get good grades? Listen, it's always worth your time to try and get good grades. But my God, please capitalize my name when you use it. No, listen, usually the way this works is that the first career job you get out of school, that's when they really care about your grades because that's the most relevant information. Once you're getting your second job or third job out of school, like career job, that's when they care less about grades, because what's much more important is how you did at your previous job. Okay? It is possible to get good grades but be a terrible employee, okay? For a variety of reasons. That's the general rule. Obviously, if you're in a specific industry or a situation, there are exceptions to that, but generally that's how that works. Like, you get your first job out of school, you're there for 2 years, and then you get hired somewhere else. So that second job after school, that's when they care slightly less about your grades. Like, they care that you have the qualification. Did you pass? Did you get the qualification? If yes, okay, great. They don't need to know details of, what did you get a B+ in this course, or, they don't care about that stuff usually. If you're going the academic track, then they will, right? But usually that's how it works. Hopefully that makes sense. Mustafa Aboud. Hi, the company's expert. Do you have any advice on some tips for new graduates in order to find a job? I've been applying for jobs since June, but I couldn't get any positive results so far. Yes. Not to totally always sound like a broken record, but learn about networking. Stuff I talked about in this live stream earlier on, like maybe 15 minutes ago, and earlier than that, we were talking about using LinkedIn to contact people, discovering the employers in your region that are in your industry, targeting them, looking within those organizations to the individuals and the decision makers at those organizations, contacting them, okay, in an appropriate professional way, and networking with them. That's the way to get the good jobs, okay? It's also great because you don't have a lot of competition for those jobs. Most jobs are not advertised because, let's face it, lots of people want jobs. Lots of people want good jobs. The moment a job gets posted, you get inundated with applicants, okay? What is actually kind of bad is, like, on the other side of the table, is posting a job, getting 250 applicants for it. Then you got to sort through all of that, try and figure out, like, okay, who's actually good and who's not good. And then, you narrow it down to a list of 10, and then you got to start doing interviews with them where you get managers and recruiters and other people involved. Very time consuming, and time is money. I mean, you're paying the company is paying all these people for their time to be there, and that you have them, like, you take a manager and you put the manager in 10 job interviews for one position. I mean, that's costing the company thousands and thousands of dollars right there. And that's before, like, the expenses of posting the job and promoting it and doing background checks and, like all the legwork that you have to do. It's expensive. So if you're in a mid-sized company, the company has about 500 people, and, you happen to know someone that would probably be good for the job, right? Instead of, like, dealing with all that expense and all that trouble and all that work, you could say, look, I'm going to bring somebody in, okay? Now, I've already done one interview with them. I know that they're interested. I know that they look like a serious contender. I know that they're qualified on paper, okay? So I've already done that. I'm going to bring them in again, and we're going to have a job interview. We're going to have someone from HR there. We're going to have somebody from your department there, my department there, and we're going to have the big boss there. And if you guys are all fine with this person, if you agree, then let's just get on with this and hire them, right? We've done our due diligence, okay? I mean, I'm not personally connected to this person, right? But I think they might be a good candidate. And that's usually how these things are done. It's perfectly legal. It's perfectly fair, right? And that candidate distinguished themselves by showing that they had the initiative and the passion to reach out and apply for this job specifically, okay? They want to work here. Okay, they're not just looking for any job. They want it to work here because they applied to us. Right? Now, I just invited them in to come and talk with us. So, if you do that, if you add that method to your job search campaign, okay, you can still apply for posted jobs. You're going in with 100 others, maybe 200 others. Okay? That's fine. But in addition to that, you supplement that posted job campaign with this hidden job campaign, okay, this networking campaign. Usually you end up getting stuff with this. Okay. The other reason why this is good, and not just this, but any form of networking is good, is because if you think about it, if you apply for a job, what do they have? They have your resume and your application, okay? So they've never met you. They don't know what you're like as a person, okay? They don't know how passionate you are. They don't know anything about your communication skills. They don't know anything about your personal traits or qualities or anything that would make you be a good candidate. But this method, okay, in addition to any sort of resume or anything that, they may ask you to send them, they've already met you. And if you met the decision maker and you got along great, you just click, you show that you know your stuff, you had a conversation about the industry, they asked you a few questions about, what did you learn in school? What's your background? Why do you want to do this? What was it about our company that made you want to reach out to us? Things like this. And you answer, you say, I see you guys do this. And I like that. I did my research project on that. I find that very exciting. I think that area is going to be the real innovative growth sector of this industry in the next 5 years. Things like this, they go, okay. I can tell you're serious. You know your stuff. You're passionate. You're committed. And, you seem to like the way we do things as far as, we've tested that. So already you're head and shoulders above any other applicant for a job because they've met you and they've seen all these qualities in you and you've demonstrated them. Okay. So they don't have to ask you those questions about what experience do you have? Because they've just seen with their own eyes. You've demonstrated communication skills. You've demonstrated how professional you are when networking, when reaching out to other companies. You could apply that to reaching out to customers. You could apply that to reaching out and representing the organization at a trade show or any other conference. These are really good skills that, you've just demonstrated. So that's why this works also, is because you're not just an applicant that they're going on your resume. You've demonstrated these things independently outside of any kind of formal job interview. So I would do that. It's, of all the things you could do, that's probably the easiest thing you can just tack on. Oh, this thing jumped again. Where was I? I think I was here. Kumar, my issue is that I've applied to many jobs, but I get denied in the first step, even before the interview. Yeah, that's typical. And that's unfortunately because so many people are competing for the posted jobs. Because they're so easy to apply for, you get inundated with applicants. So, think about it. If 200 people apply for a job, before you even start to assess people, statistically, you have a 0.5% of getting that 0.5% chance of getting that job if 200 people apply, right? So the solution is there are many, many other ways of applying for jobs. Do your own research and look into the others. I'm describing one. Okay, I'm describing one alternative here. Okay, I go into much greater detail in my course. And like I said, I do have some free YouTube videos on my channel that talk about pieces of the process. Okay, if you want to learn about the discovery phase, I have a video. It's not a very popular video. I'm actually surprised. I thought it would be a lot more popular, but on how to do the discovery of the jobs, like who to contact. And it's called How Successful People Get Jobs. So check out that video. And that gives you an idea of what this stuff looks like what kind of world you're getting into. Okay. And like I've said a bunch of times, I mean, this is how executives get jobs. It's the same method. They do it all by networking. It's very, I mean, if you apply for a C-level job or something, you don't go to a interview with a recruiter where they ghost you half the time, or they sit you down and they say, so tell me about yourself. Why should we hire you? I mean, if you think that they ask those kind of questions from those type of people to get executive jobs, they don't. That's not how it works. It's a completely different way. And it's not like it's some conspiracy or some, thing that, they keep everyone down. It's not. It's just that a lot of people below the executive level just aren't aware that you do this. If you've come up through sales, if you've got a sales background, you probably know about this way of getting jobs because this is very similar to the sales process, right? But if you are from operations or, accounting or something like that, supply chain, you probably are unaware of this kind of activity. This is how people get together and partner and do work together. They do contract work, they do part-time stuff, they do casual gig work, they become employees, or they just make various other business contracts and partnerships. So it's exactly how you do these things. They go, yeah, great. That's so easy. You're offering this thing that I'm looking for. And I just happen to be looking for it. And you seem professional. You seem easy to deal with. You seem like you're passionate about working with me because you sought me out specifically and you know a bit about my company. So, I mean, that sounds very promising. And if I'm looking for that, yeah, why would I not say like, okay, let's get together and have a talk and see if we're looking for the same thing. Kumar says, I don't know how to change that. Check out some of the videos on my channel. That might be a start. I mean, there's a lot of other things out there too, but you could start with that and hopefully that helps. Go to my YouTube channel page and like you just click on the company's expert, it takes you to my page. And you know, you can see the playlists and the videos and the live streams and, you know, the community page. And under my main page, I've put a couple of playlists, and one of them goes into this process. It gives you a sort of overview, and then you can go from there. CB Fung says, hi, Mr. Bill, want to apply for some junior positions as moving to a new country. Is it a good idea not to list some senior work experiences so that my CV won't be screened out in the first screening? Are you talking about like applicant tracking software where it's a computer that reads your resume and then it sort of filters you out without a human looking at it? Is that what you're talking about? Like listen, I'm not an expert on like immigration and that kind of stuff. I know there are some YouTube channels and other things online that, you know, like people are experts on that and they can probably give you a lot better advice than I can about, you know, immigrating to a country and then, you know, how to get your foot in the door and all that. I do know, I'll tell you what I know, okay? And I've talked about this before. Number one, the thing that seems to be very important for people that are like new immigrants, at least in my country, in Canada, I mean, that's all I've had experience with, is having like host country experience. So having experience in Canada. So what I've seen is I've seen people that are like professionals back in their home country. Okay. They've got all kinds of, you know, really good qualifications in specialized areas, but they end up coming in, they end up getting a very low level job in the beginning, because even though they have all these qualifications, the question they're always asked is, okay, give me a reference for a previous boss that you've had in this country that I can contact. Okay. I don't want to contact somebody halfway around the world. They speak a different language than I do. I don't know who this person is. I can't verify who they are. These qualifications you have, they're unfamiliar to me. They're from another country halfway around the world. I don't know if they're respected or if they're valued or what the equivalent is to something that I'm more familiar with in this country. I have all these issues. So the first thing that they need is experience here. So what these people do, or at least in my experience, as far as I've seen, is they get like a lower level job, kind of like what you're talking about, in their country that they're emigrating to. And, you know, it might be like a really low level blue collar type thing, but they only do it for like a little while, like maybe even a couple of months. And, you know, if you can get a letter of recommendation from your boss, if you can get a reference from your boss, you have coworkers also that you've worked with there that can give you references, things like this, you know, that helps you get your foot in the door, and then you can get more of a career job. The other thing that I know about this from experience is that some companies, not all, but some companies, if you have specialized qualifications, they will give you a chance. Okay. Now it might be different for heavily regulated industries like medicine, stuff like that. But outside of those, okay, like if you're a journeyman, a tradesman of some kind, you've got qualifications to work on industrial equipment or whatever. That's sort of my background that I've dealt with. There's some companies that will hire you. They don't fully understand your qualifications. They've done some basic verification of it, but beyond that, they can't really verify it. They don't know exactly how qualified you are. So what they'll do is they'll hire you at a lower rate, and they'll say, okay, we'll give you a chance. So you work for us, and by working for us, we will then better be able to assess your level of knowledge. Okay. And, if we can use you to do customer service or sales or any of those other functions too, we can't tell that just by a job interview. We need to work with you to really get a feel for how competent you are in these areas. So they'll hire you at a lower rate, because of that, because you're a higher risk employee. And in my experience, you get all kinds. You get people that are like extremely good employees that are very talented, and then you want to keep them. Other times you get people, it turns out that they really don't know very much, and they're not really very good at very much, and it doesn't really work out. So I know some companies will do that. There are a few anyway that will do that. I don't know how widespread they are or if that applies to every industry. That's just my personal experience with that. But check out some other YouTube channels or some other resources on the web. There's people that specialize in precisely what you're trying to do. Go from one country to a specific country and how to do it, how to get a career job in that particular country. So check that out. Hopefully that helps somewhat. Oh, I'm falling really far behind here. Actually, I'm not doing too bad. We got about 8 questions. Okay. How do you say this? Marianne Kochik. I'm applying for a position I am slightly overqualified for. Okay, a software engineer, but they need a technical solutions engineer. Their proposed salary is lower as the role is simpler. How to negotiate up? Well, I've done a video on that. I would, instead of me trying to lay it all out here, it's not something I can explain in 2 minutes. Just check out my video. I've got an hour-long video on salary negotiation because I take you through all these different aspects of it. I've also got some shorter videos about specific things. Okay, starting with in a job interview when they ask you what are your salary expectations, right? If they ask you that in an interview, it's different from when they ask you that on a form. On a form, whether it's online or otherwise, you have to put a number. You can't put a range. You can't avoid the question. You have to put a number. So that's a different thing. If they ask you, how much money did you make in your last job? Like these pointed questions. That's something else. And then if you get to the point where they give you an offer and you're trying to negotiate, like, I want that number scratched out. I want you to write in this other number. How to do that? Okay, so there's many aspects to this, and that's without even going into how to negotiate. So check out some of those videos. Okay, I really can't give you like a very short answer on that would help in any way. It's a big topic. Zet. I am not old. I'm 24, having experience of 20 months in my field of work. I resigned my job yesterday after being asked by my manager in HR. I asked them the reason, but I got a response like things are not working as expected. I want to know if this question comes up in future interview. How do I need to respond? Thanks. Okay, so in an interview, a common question that they can ask is, why did you leave your last job? Right? That's a common job interview question. It's one of the standard questions. They ask you a question about the future. They ask you a question about the past. This is the question about the past. Okay. Now, okay. So the bottom line is you don't know why you were laid off. Okay. I'm assuming that legally you weren't laid off for cause. You were laid off without cause, right? That's what I'm getting from what you said here. Okay, they just said, or no, you resigned. What you said was you resigned. They didn't lay you off. You quit, right? They asked you to quit and you quit. Now, water under the bridge, nothing you can do about that now. But just for everybody else listening, usually this is not what you want to do, okay? Because if you quit a job, it depends what country you're in, because they have all different laws, like labor laws. But usually if you quit, it means that you don't get any benefits, right? You can't get, if there's unemployment insurance, you usually can't get that if you quit, or you get a reduced version of it. If, on the other hand, you were laid off, the company laid you off, they said, look, it's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that we don't have enough money to pay all of our employees. So unfortunately, we have to let some of them go. Okay, so that's when you're laid off or without cause. Okay, so in that case, you're usually eligible for all kinds of benefits, whatever benefits are offered to you in your country by your government or from your employer. Okay. It's different from quitting or being fired for cause, where you've done something bad. You were caught stealing from the company, so they fired you. In that case, usually you don't get a lot of benefits. Okay. So this is a trick that some employers will do. It's kind of an underhanded trick where they play upon people's ignorance, and they say, well, can you just quit, and you go, okay, and then you quit, but you lose, because then you're not entitled to benefits. If they laid you off, they'd have to pay you benefits, and they didn't want to do that maybe, so they asked you to quit, and you said, sure. Okay, now, forgetting about that, okay, that's all in the past. Okay, you're asking about the future. How do you respond to this? If you go to a job interview and they say, why did you quit your last job, or why did you leave your last job? Okay, the bottom line, don't go into any of this. Okay, don't tell them that you quit. Don't make any mention of there possibly being a problem between you and your employer. Because when you're trying to make a first impression with somebody and you go into this stuff, you look bad. You look like there's something wrong with you. It looks like, oh, you're the type of employee that doesn't work out, right? So the answer to give is just to say, look, I was ready to do more. Okay? You put a positive spin on it. This is one of those questions where you try and get off the question as fast as possible. You don't want to be talking for 10 minutes all about this. Okay? The more you talk, the more chance you have of saying something that they'll interpret as a red flag and being eliminated. Okay, so you want to say as little as possible, get the hell off this question, get back to giving them reasons why they should hire you. How you're good at this, how you have this skill, how you have this experience, how you've got this qualification. Okay, so short answer is to say, I was just ready to do more. It was time to do more. I'd been in that role for a while. I felt I'd learned everything that I could learn, and I'm much more passionate about branching out and learning to do this. And the thing that you say I want to learn is the thing that they're interviewing you for. Okay, so that's kind of in a nutshell how you respond to this. Whew. Hopefully that makes sense. But that's a situation I know a lot of people are in. You're welcome, MCR. Absolutely welcome. Okay. Thank you, Bill, for answering my question, and thanks also because 2 years ago your videos helped me land a job in the financial industry. Well, good. Congratulations. I'm glad it worked out. Or at least I guess it did for a while, right? Because you're back. Mustafa says, thanks a lot for the satisfying answers and the high quality content. Well, thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say, and it's not a problem. I think one of my family members is sick with something, and I think they might have given it to me. That's all I need. Advaith Kumar says, thank you. I appreciate your advice. Been trying to network with a lot of people. Good. Listen, my understanding is that 50% of the world are introverts. It's roughly 50%. 50% are extroverts, 50% are introverts. an introvert is somebody who can do all the social interaction, just they don't enjoy it. They don't do it for fun. They can be really good at it, but they do it through necessity, and it's not what they do to relax, right? Introverts are the type of people you come home after work and you don't surround yourself with 50 people you don't know and have a party. Instead, you go watch TV, or you read a book, or you get online, or you do something kind of solitary. That's what you do for fun, right? That's an introvert. Okay, some introverts have social anxiety and they're not good at public speaking. Others are good at public speaking and they can do all that stuff, and they can do it well. But it's not what they do for fun. So 50% of people are introverts, is my understanding. Okay, and the networking stuff, the more you invest in it, like learning how it's done, learning what to say, learning how to strike up a conversation with somebody, learning how to write a professional message to possibly a decision maker in your industry, something like that. Those skills last you your entire career. And they really make the difference between somebody who ends up getting hired and somebody that doesn't, because there are a lot of people that are technically qualified to do many jobs. The problem is only a few of them are easy to work with and can present themselves professionally and make a good impression, things like that. So that tends to be the stuff that matters when you're trying to get a job. And I know some people, upon hearing that, will not like it, but the good news is that this stuff is actually quite easy. It's actually, I'm an introvert, and I started off as an engineer, and an introverted engineer type, technical person, and I didn't even have any siblings. I'm an only child. So talk about not having that stuff in your life at an early age. So I had to learn it later. And then when you realize how little there really is to it, it's like, this is child's play. Especially if you're the type of introvert, you're a technical type person, you've done math, some people were talking about being developers or whatever. It's like, this stuff is child's play compared to learning that. All it takes is just a little bit of practice and a little bit of research on what to say. And then you practice it a little. And next thing you know, you've got all these capabilities that you didn't have before. Okay, especially if you're young, you can totally learn this. Like, this is not going to be one of the bigger challenges you've ever done. Whiplash. I like that name. I've often found volunteering or asking to job shadow someone for a few days is a great way to network and find out a lot of inside information. Love your content. Awesome channel. Well, thank you. Yes, you're absolutely correct. That's actually a very good way of seeing things for yourself. And once you see them, you realize, hey, this is not as intimidating as I thought it once was. It seems pretty straightforward. So yes, that's another way of doing it. Like, obviously things like job fairs and stuff like that is another way of networking. There's many ways of doing this. CB Fung says, good to know more. Thank you very much, Mr. Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Mr. Fung, or Ms. Fung. Naps. Hey, Bill, amazing content as usual. Thank you very much. Any tips for a training on the job scenario where some coworkers aren't welcoming or helpful? Thanks. That's a great question. Listen, here's like a real conflict, a real world conflict in a lot of organizations. From the point of view of an organization, okay, as a whole, knowledge shared is power, right? The problem is, from an individual perspective, like for the point of view of one employee, knowledge hoarded is power, right? If you're the only person in your company that knows how to operate that piece of equipment over there, you have power. If they fire you, no one can operate the equipment. And if you don't train anyone, and they get rid of you, it'll be very disruptive and expensive, right? So unfortunately, the reality is that your perspective, like from your incentive is to like, if you're the only one that can do things or you have like a lot of specialized knowledge, you would not want to share it. Because now that 20 other people are trained in how to operate that equipment, they might conclude, hey, you're the senior person. They're paying you more than all these other people, but all these other people can operate that piece of equipment. Why don't we fire the most expensive employee, you, and get one of these young whippersnappers to operate that equipment? Wouldn't that be cheaper from the point of view of the company? Yes, it would, right? So there's a direct conflict there in an organization. And it manifests itself in what you're describing, where you go for like on-the-job training, but they're not really enthusiastic about training you, and they don't really train you on every little thing. They do the bare minimum so they can say they've trained you, but they're still more valuable and capable because they didn't tell you how to do certain things, right? So that's common, unfortunately. Where's your question here? Yeah, training on the job. So that's NAPS. Okay. Any tips for training on the job? Well, listen, that's where you get into like just dealing with the person one-on-one. You have to ask a million questions. And if it's a really big problem, you sometimes have no other choice but to really get the boss involved. To say like, look, I know you told them to train me and they sort of walked me through it, but I don't really feel like they really told me a lot, that kind of thing. Because if anything happens, it's going to come back to you. And if somebody is one of your coworkers is setting you up for a fall because they didn't want to cross-train you in the things that makes them valuable, you're going to end up being the fall guy unless you do something. So you try and deal with the coworker as much as possible. We try and ask a whole bunch of questions. Okay. Ask them if they don't volunteer the information, just ask and ask and ask. And if that doesn't work, get your boss involved. That's all I would say. Beyond that, there's not really too much you can do. And if you suspect that there's something fishy going on, they haven't told you anything, you can report back to your boss and say, okay, well, this coworker did train me like you instructed. They told me how to do this, this, and this. Okay, that's it. That's all they told me how to do. So I feel I can do those three things. Now, I'm not sure if there's any more to it, but that's what I was told. Just so you're aware. Something like that. In big organizations, they care a lot about covering their butt. That's the number one priority of anyone in a big organization. They care less about doing the actual work. They care more about just not being blamed for something. So there's a culture of passing the buck, and this ties in with that. You say, hey, look, okay, I was trained on this, this, and this. So these three things, I can do them, no problem. But that's just so you know, that's all I've been taught how to do. So if there was more, you need to tell my coworker to train me on the rest of it. Okay, pretty exciting stuff. But hopefully that answers your question there, Naps. Okay, TechnoBeat TV. Hello, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and especially during college. I always get nervous because of my minor case of autism, but one question is that, how do you maintain composure? Simple, practice. Okay, and I've got some strong feelings on people who say they're autistic. If it's medically diagnosed autism, that's one thing. If it's just like, oh, I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I have autism, not so much. Especially when you're like somewhat and somehow overwhelmed, even though it's a small thing, it's a minor thing of mine. Yeah, listen, we all have challenges, okay, in our lives. And technical people tend to behave in a similar way, like all technical people. If you're a detail, and I can speak from experience here, if you're a detail-oriented person, okay, you can easily get overwhelmed when you've got a lot of things coming at you all at the same time. Because you focus on details. So you've just got here's 100 details, here's another 100 details, here's another 200 details, here's another 300, and it's like, I can't process it fast enough. Okay, so you max out, you shut down. I've been in that situation myself on the job many times, especially in my early career. You could be a very capable employee. You divide and conquer. You could organize yourself usually to counter that. So everything's under control. Everything is sort of compartmentalized and arranged, and you can like focus on one thing at a time and knock each one out of the park in sequence. But it can be weird in social situations, or it can be weird where there's like what the cliche term is, a fast-paced environment, where you're just getting like a ton of things thrown at you. Right. Okay. So you're not unusual in that respect. A lot of technical people are on the autism spectrum to some degree. You know what I'm saying? It might not be medically diagnosed, but there's a little bit there. Okay. But that's normal. Okay. That's in my experience, there's no such thing as like a perfect personality. On the extrovert side, you get also like pros and cons. And they have the opposite problem. There's no attention to detail. They can seem haphazard and careless on the downside, and they miss details. They miss important details sometimes, but they don't tend to get overwhelmed. You can throw a ton of stuff at them all the time, and they just take it in their stride. They don't overload or shut down. So I mean, obviously I'm oversimplifying this, and I'm not a psychologist. This is my experience working with many different types of people over the years. And you see patterns, right? When dealing with salespeople, that's different from dealing with the R&D department. You got to communicate in different ways. You've got to assign work and projects and things in different ways. So you have a challenge like most people do. And you've just got to keep working at it. Understanding yourself is the first step. Understanding how you behave in different situations by being put in different situations is sort of, I would say, like the first phase. Sometimes you are surprised at what you find, that's the first step. The second step is, now that you are armed with this knowledge, you're forewarned, forearmed, you can then control what situations you're being put in to a degree. Okay, so you avoid being put in situations where you don't behave or you don't perform at your best. Right? That's kind of the second step. Not always possible to do, not always easy to do, but if you do that as much as you possibly can, and then you try and develop the weak areas. You try and manage those situations. And a lot of that comes with experience. You try different things over the years and you find, that worked better than what I did last time. And that's just all there is. And beyond that, just don't beat yourself up about it. I mean, everybody's got their own challenges, and, you figure things out with experience. And anything you can do along the way to do research and get knowledge about these things, the better. It's investing in yourself. Kyle McGowan says, some are born natural manipulators. I mean, social. Okay. That's kind of a cynical point of view. Yeah, there are some pretty malevolent, nasty, manipulative people out there. Yeah, but being social doesn't necessarily mean manipulative. Just mimic a boring, perfect person until you're in. Okay. Every time I get laid off, I'm unemployed for months because I don't make a good first impression. Yeah, okay, so you've got two options there. Number one, you could work on that. Or number two, like the recurring theme apparently of my live streams and my channel is, if you're always getting a job by responding to job applications and then going to a job interview with recruiters, another, like to really boil this down, you could either learn to do good job interviews, or you could get a job without doing those type of job interviews. Like we were talking about networking. You don't get a job interview in the conventional sense when you go by networking, at least the way I advocate for, because it's not really an interview, it's a referral, right? When they bring you in, they already believe in you. and you're talking to the person that has invited you in. They already have seen enough potential in you to want to bring you in. It's not like they're interviewing you because they have to. It's their job. They're interviewing you because they want to. It's a totally different thing. Okay? The way they interact with you is completely different. In a job interview, they tend to not believe a lot of things you say because they know that you're here for self-interest, right? You're here for yourself. You're not here because you want to help them. That's the assumption that they start with. So it's very skeptical. It's very negative. If you're just having a conversation with somebody else about, maybe we should work together, right? That's an entirely different dynamic. Nobody's trying to exploit the other person. They're just seeing look, is there some common ground here that would make sense for you and it would make sense for me, that we partner up to do a certain thing, right? That's the nature of a referral, right? They bring you and they say, hey, can you come down and talk to us? This time, this place, does that work for you? You say, yeah, I can do that. Or no, I'll do it tomorrow. Or I can do it right here. And they say, sure. Okay. Yeah, we're free that time. So you come down, they say listen, we were thinking of maybe hiring somebody or maybe getting someone to do this. And this person suggested your name. And so we're bringing you down to suggest this to you. What do you think? Does that sound like something you'd be interested in doing? Should we go deeper, And you say, oh, that I never thought of that. I guess we could do that. It's a totally different dynamic than a job interview is my point. Okay. So if you don't do well at job interviews, another advantage of finding a different method of getting a job is that, you can not put yourself in that situation. Okay. Now, if you're young, I would recommend work on your interviewing skills regardless. That's a very important skill. Okay. And it opens you up later. Think of outside of jobs. Let's say you're happily, gainfully employed. Okay. You're working on projects for your employer as part of your job. And maybe you rise up a couple of levels, over 10 years or something. And, you have to, now you get to the point where you're going to propose projects. You're going to propose to the boss, and maybe the boss says, we should work on this. I propose we do this. Okay. Now you're giving a presentation. You're trying to sell them on an idea. Okay. I propose we go with my idea. Right. It's the same skills that you would be using in a job interview. Okay. You're trying to sell an idea. In a job interview, you're trying to sell yourself as the best candidate. So that's the reason I say work on your interviewing skills. Not only does it pay off directly, in that you do a better job interview, but those skills are transportable. They apply to other areas. Okay. Anytime you want to persuade someone that your thing is the one they should go with, these skills come into play. How to communicate, how to present it, how to persuade them, how to make it look like, it's really going to work. Right? Because after all, that's what a job interview is. You're trying to present yourself. You're saying look, I'm a safe bet. If you go with me, it's going to work out. It's not going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be inconvenient. It's not going to be an expensive mistake. What you're seeing is what you're going to get. And, I'll work out really well. So it's the same skills. So the more of those you can develop, especially when you're young, the more they will pay off for you, directly or indirectly. Would you please recommend any of your videos for writing a cover letter or application email? Well, I have a video. Just type in the company's expert cover letter, and then hopefully there's at least one video where I focus on the cover letter. So hopefully in the search box, if you type that, the company's expert, and then cover letter, that should come up. Tom and Tom Racing. That leaves me with several questions, several unanswered questions that I'd love to ask. Tom and Tom Racing says, appreciate all you do. Was just rejected from a job. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Thought it was mine. Had 4 separate interviews. Really thought I was going to get it. I know it is easy to say get over it, but how? Listen, there's nothing I can say that's going to like instantly make you feel happy and you forget all about it. Okay, but maybe some facts might be helpful. Okay, first of all, what you got to understand is, and I've been on the other side of this. Okay, it's like when you're doing job interviews and you're seeing a lot of candidates, you know, you'd love to hire several of them. You know, there's several people that you've seen that would be great, you know, and sometimes if it's a group decision, you know, one person will like one candidate, another person will like another candidate. It's, you know, it's kind of that type situation. So it's not like, you know, you failed, you're no good. You know, that's usually not how it goes, especially if they brought you in for 4 interviews. Okay. If they brought you in for 4 interviews, I can tell you with confidence, unless this company is completely incompetent, you know, you had a champion there. Okay. And they thought you were good. You were not a dud. You were not bad. Okay. If you come in for 4 interviews, so you're in like the final rounds and you don't get it, it's usually because you could have done it, but they could only hire one. And sometimes it just boils down to some really silly things at the end and a lot of random chance. You know what I'm saying? So don't take the fact that you didn't get it as like a rejection of your fitness, of your employability, of your skills, of your self-worth. You shouldn't take it like that, because that's not what it's about. The other thing is that, I mean, in any situation where, like, you know, a ton of people apply, but only one gets it, that's just how it goes. And so you just have to keep moving, because this process has more to do with random chance than it has with any kind of crafted or calculated thing on your part. Okay, that's just how it goes. And on top of that, like that explains a lot of things already, but on top of that, there are bad employers out there, unbeknownst to the candidate. You don't know what you're getting into. Even if it looks really promising, you have no idea what you're getting into. And people end up picking the final candidate. Oh, God. Excuse me. For some really stupid reasons. And you end up walking into a bad situation. And it's actually a blessing in disguise that you didn't get some stuff. So I don't know if that makes you feel better, but I mean, these are the realities. Okay. The only way to handle this is you cast a wide net, you go after a lot of opportunities, you keep applying, you never stop and look back and wait for the phone to ring. You keep moving forward by applying for new jobs, pursuing other leads and networking opportunities. Okay. And if somebody wants you back and calls you back, great. But aside from that, you just keep moving forward. That's how you get these. It's a matter of chance, and it'll just work out sooner or later. That's how these things go. So there you go. That's what I would say. So best of luck to you, Tom and Tom Racing. I can tell that, well, your name suggests that you at least have some personality, and that goes a long way in this world. I think that's a typical complaint that old people have about young people, right? You know, young people, it's all generic. They're all carbon copies of each other. It's like, get some uniqueness, get an edge, get something that's like, I mean, that's what I like in people. I like someone with a bit of an edge. They're not absolutely typical or average in every way. They've got like something interesting about them, you know? That makes you more unique. It makes you, like, you can say with confidence that, like, I'd be the best person for this. Nobody else can bring what I can bring to this, whatever it is, you know? Because nobody else has this weird combination of things like I do. I can bring this and I can bring that. I bridge these two worlds. How many people bridge those two worlds? You know? Not many people. Okay, SI0524. How do I deal with a manager whose way is the only way? Not just a micromanager, but one who truly has a problem of being in control. Okay, so they have like the power's gone to their head kind of thing. And they don't delegate. And listen, I hate to say this, Others may use different approaches. This is like it's a personality thing. But in my career, what I learned, the lesson I got, I don't know if this is the right lesson to take away from these situations, because I've dealt with that too, is that, you can't fight City Hall. If the boss is in charge, they're in charge. If they want to do it a certain way, they're going to do it that way. I mean, as long as they're not violating the law of the land, they're not violating human rights laws or employment standard laws, or something technical like that. They're, for better or worse, they've been put in charge. And if it fails or it succeeds, it's going to be because of them. The good news is that if they're an idiot and they're doing things in a really stupid way and they're insufferable and it fails, they're the ones that take the fall. Okay? At least in most situations. Maybe not all situations. Maybe government and some large organizations are the exception to that. But usually, in any kind of for-profit enterprise, that's usually how it goes. And within, I'd say, a year, like these things are only temporary. If you have a real raging idiot in charge, who drives away the good employees and makes life miserable for everybody else and is also incompetent, that's usually how it goes. Now, if they're driving away good employees and they're making everyone miserable, but they're winning, I don't know if that's possible. I'd say they can make life miserable for people, but driving away good employees, usually I've never seen when someone does that, but they also succeed. I've never seen that. If they are winning, then take a lesson from it. Okay. Now you can decide for yourself. Okay. You have control over yourself. The company put the boss in charge of you. Okay. You don't have any control over that. You could always complain, I suppose, but there's consequences to that depending on how you do it. But you have control over yourself. And this is truly something that is just not going to work for you long term. And there's no use pretending that you could just get used to it. Start looking for another thing. Okay. Put your frustrations with your job and your boss into looking for something better. Okay. If that's the only solution for you, like if you can't live with it. Okay. If, however, you think that that the boss is failing, everything is going to hell, and that's only a matter of time before somebody holds them responsible, then just wait for that to happen if you can bear it. That's what I'd say. You're welcome, Tom and Tom Racing. I'm glad that helps somewhat. Hopefully that makes sense. SI 0524. Not a lot you can do. You're not in a position of power. The good news is that you're not in the position of responsibility. If they're not letting you think for yourself, you are not responsible for anything. You know what I mean? Being able to think for yourself and have decision-making authority, that's what makes you responsible for if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, but you didn't have any control over it whatsoever, you're not responsible for it. You're not accountable. All you have control over is yourself. And you're at the end of the day, if it's unworkable, you can always jump to a much more favorable situation where you are appreciated and they do use your talents. Okay. I know that's not everyone's first choice, but at the end of the day, that's the power you have. Dan Fleming, looks like my question was moderated out. Weird. Dan Fleming is asking, how is the work-life balance here an inappropriate question? I think it's a good opportunity to see how the employer reacts. Did I say that? How is the work-life balance here? It's not inappropriate. You can say it, but what you've got to be aware of is, once again, if you ask that in a job interview, and it's especially your first job interview, once again, it's one of those questions that suggests that depending on how you ask it, that you're out for yourself. You're not here to help. You're here to take as much as you can, get as much as you can. Now, I covered this at the very beginning of the live stream. Yes, we all know, of course, you're here to get stuff. That's the whole purpose of getting a job. We need a job. It's not for fun. It's not a hobby. You have to pay me to be here. Okay, obviously, I'm here for myself. It's self-interest that leads me here. Okay, but the problem is a recruiter does not want to hire a candidate that appears to have absolutely no desire to help a team succeed together. They don't want to hire someone who's purely in it for themselves. They're selfish. They don't care about the organization. They don't care about their boss or their team members or anything like that. You know, you want people that will work well with everyone else and try to assist the organization as a whole. So the problem is when you ask a lot of questions like that, or you ask them like right off the bat, or you put a lot of emphasis on them, that can signal some negative things. So you just have to be careful when and how you ask those things. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, you can see how the employer reacts, but the problem is that's not how you make a good impression. The good impression is like, you know, I'd love to work here. I'm just glad that, you know, you're interviewing me, right? It's just a privilege to be here. I'd love to help out. You know, the way you guys do things, I have no problem with any of it. That all works for me. Like, that's the impression you want to give. So you can ask these questions later on. And like I said in my last video that came out a couple of days ago, it's like, get the job offer first. If you don't get a job offer out of this, what does it matter? You know, you could grill them, but if they're not even offering you the job, what the hell does it matter? You just wasted your time and their time. So get the job, get them to give you an offer. And then when they're hoping that you'll just sign it and return it because they want you and they've invested in you by doing all the background checks and all that kind of stuff because they want you, they're just assuming you'll accept it. That's when you have something to bargain with. And you could say like, well, I'm just wondering, you know, what's the work-life balance? Like, you know, then they say something and you say, well, you know, if I were to do this, would that be okay? And they say, sure. And you're like, okay, can we put that in the contract? You know, something like that. Like, I don't know, like that's the opportunity to do it at the end, not at the beginning. Okay, that carries more weight, in my opinion. That's what I'd recommend. AT says, what's the most effective or professional way I can address why I am asking for a somewhat higher salary than the person who held the position before me in an interview? Okay, number one, that's irrelevant. You don't have to justify anything. I'm sorry, I need this much money. Okay? Like, okay, sometimes it's not bad if you justify. It's like, well, you know, cost of living increase or relocation costs or whatever. You know, you can say whatever. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's like you only negotiate the stuff when they've sent you an offer. They're hoping you're going to sign it. If you don't sign it, it means, we got to go back to the drawing board. We got to go to our number 2 candidate and do background checks on them and vet them again and see if they're still available, you know? So they're hoping you'll say yes, right? So it doesn't matter. You just say like, if you know your position, you say like, look, if you don't pay me this number, it just doesn't make any financial sense for me to take the job. You don't need to justify that. You don't. Okay? It doesn't matter. I mean, just say something nice. You know? It's like, well, you know, I feel that, you know, with my experience, I do have more experience than the last person. And, you know, I believe that this number was based off what I told you was my salary for my last job. Well, I've had 5 years of experience in the trenches since then. Therefore, I should be compensated more because I'm bringing that much more experience to the role. You know, like, I don't know, just anything. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if they don't change the number, you don't accept the job. If they do change it, you accept. That's all that matters. You know, a lot of times it's not possible to persuade your adversary with, you know, a reasonable argument or reasonable thing, because they're conditioned to try and get you for as little money as possible. So they won't say, oh, well, you make a good point. Yes, sure. Okay, we'll give you more money. They're like that. That's not part of their MO. They will never do that. So it doesn't matter how many logical arguments. You can't persuade them to give you more money. You just have to say, look, I need more money, or I can't accept. And if they say, well, I'm sorry, we can't go any higher. This is all we can do. You say, okay, thank you. I will, in that case, I will get back to you. And then, which is the universal code for, I will not get back to you because this is over. So, a lot of times it comes down to that. The thing is to ask for something reasonable, know your position, and stick to it. SI 0524, thank you kindly. It is definitely unworkable. I am now looking for a better fit. Well, listen, SI 0524, if you are exploited or you're the victim of, an abusive boss, you are not alone. That's quite common. And the more you recognize these situations and you move into a better situation, the more you will come out on top. Okay. It's far better to do that, in my opinion, than stay in a miserable, unworkable situation. Okay, you will benefit. I know it's a little stressful, a little uncertain, the idea of I have to jump to something else. You don't know what that is. But in the end, you will come out on top. Okay? So best of luck. Best of luck to you. New person, Awang WK says, I was given 24 hours to resign or to be fired. Oh, I chose to resign because the package was okay and would look better on my reference letter. What's your view on the choice? Still jobless now. Okay, I see. But was it fired for cause or not for cause? That's the big question. Depending on what country you're in around the world, they have those different distinctions, right? So that would be, like if they say fired, okay, the first thing is if they say like you could either resign or you could be fired. And my first question would be like, okay, are you going to fire me for cause or without cause? That would be the first question, because that's two totally different things. And if they say it's for cause, you go, okay, well, we'll see about this, because, there are, depending on where you are, of course, in the world, like if you're in the United States, for example, where I'm not, there's legal issues they have to jump through. They can't just like fire you. Like you did, they're saying you did something wrong, but they've never come to you and ever told you that was wrong. They didn't tell you these are the rules that you must follow, and they didn't tell you, hey, you did that. You're not allowed to do that. Don't do that again. You're fired one day for something like the companies are not allowed to do that, right? So that would be my first thing. Anyway, that's beside the point for your question. If they've given you that and you didn't ask, but it's already been made. I mean, look, what's happened has happened. What the choice that you made was the best choice that you could possibly make at the time with the level of knowledge you had. And it doesn't sound like you did anything horribly wrong or anything. So, it seems fine to me. Okay, so Wong WK. Oh, due to cost cutting. Okay, so that would be laid off then. So you would be fired without cause, which, termination without cause is, I think, officially what it's called. And that would be just left. So you'd be entitled to all kinds of benefits, right? Now, in that case, I would let them, if you could go over and do it again, I would do the opposite. I would, if this ever happens to you in the future and they give you that choice where you say, okay, so my choices are resigning, like quitting, or being terminated without cause, I will be terminated without cause because I don't want to leave. This is your idea, not mine. I given the choice, I would rather continue working here. Right? I'm not voluntarily leaving. Right? So if you could write me up as terminated without cause, then let's call it a day. Now, the other thing is that whenever you get faced with a question like this, a decision like this, okay, once again, I have to put this disclaimer on, depending where you are in the world, okay? But most countries have this. Most places have this. There is a number, a telephone number you can call that goes right to the government, and it's the number for the Employment Standards Division of the government, okay? And this phone number is very useful because usually it allows you to do two things. First of all, you call the number and you can talk to an expert on your local employment law, like your employment standards and employment law. So if you don't know if a company's allowed to do this, do they have the right to do this to me or not? Or don't they have to give me notice or any question like that? You call the number and you ask, and you don't have to give your name. You don't have to identify yourself. You say, look, I'm an employee in this region, and I don't really want to give you my name, but I've got a question. Okay, my employer has come to me and they've said, we're giving you a choice. You can either resign or we're going to terminate you without cause. Okay, what is best for me to do? What would be your recommendation that I would do? Can they do this? And if they can, what should I do? Right? So it's a way to get expertise. The other purpose of that phone line is usually so that you can blow the whistle on your company. Now, this isn't a big dramatic thing, but you just say, look, I'm not going to give you my name, but just so you know, I'm an employee of this company and they are doing this. Okay? And my understanding is that they're not allowed to do that. Okay? They need to give me a choice first or, whatever. And then they'll tell you what the deal is and what they can do. Those, where I am in Canada, those organizations, they can shut down any company because of this stuff. They can audit any company whenever they feel like because of this stuff. And I believe it works the same way in a lot of other countries. Like all these companies around the world that operate in countries, they have to obey human rights laws, employment standards laws. Like for example, the company comes to you and say, we're going to pay you less than minimum wage. Or they say, you have to work 15 hours and you don't get a break. Things like this. Those are all against the local labor laws. So it's just a 30-second Google search away. Usually the way you do it is you go to the Google search box and you type in employment standards and then your city or your region. And then the first thing that comes up usually is going to be the branch, like the government website where they enforce those laws, right? And they'll start with a phone number. The next thing that might come up will be the actual law itself. What are the laws? You can read it. Okay. So that's a pretty handy tool if ever you're in these situations. And you're not alone in figuring this stuff out. You have the experts. The government, depending on what country you're in, the government is set up to help you. Okay? Employment standards are set up to help you, not the company. These people are on your side. They'll tell you what you should do, and they'll tell you what the company's allowed to do. And if the company is not obeying the law, they will take the action. They'll leave your name out of it for them, at least in Canada, they'll leave your name out of it, right? They're not going to say, oh, who was causing the trouble or anything. So you don't have to worry about that stuff, okay? This is set up to help you as a worker, okay? As an employee who has rights that are protected in that country, okay? That's how this stuff is set up. And it's set up so that companies have to obey the law, right? Maybe next time what I'll do is I'll set up my web browser so I can go to Google. I can show you what this looks like, if anyone's interested in real time, just as we're talking about it. You're welcome, Ice Cold Wasim. Joseph says, I hate when they ask for salary history. Yeah, they can ask. Doesn't mean you have to give it. Now, if they absolutely require that of everybody, You don't have to give it, but you could lose them not considering you, depending where you are in the world. I know in India, that's a big thing. They want salary history. They want proof. The reason companies ask for this stuff is because they are not allowed to look it up. It's your confidential information, and it's not shared with them, and they can't look it up anywhere. They can't go to a website, where it shows them your salary history, right? So what they do is they ask you for it, and they make it out like, you have to give this to us. You don't have to give it to them. That would be another phone call. If you want to know how this works in your country, call that number and just say, can they ask me this? Like, do I have to give it to them? Are they allowed to ask that? Things like this, right? Might be nice to know. Okay. Now, yes, you give up. Yes. If you don't do every exact thing that they say, if they say, we need your credit card number, and you refuse to give it to them, yes, you could forfeit the job, right? But do you want to work for these people? They're doing something they're not supposed to do. Alvaro says, good morning. Thank you for your help, full of perfect advice. Thank you. I'm glad you guys like this. And same to SI0524. Dan Jenkins, if you don't get hired by your company, but later update your skills, would you recommend reapplying to that company after some time has passed? I don't know. Possibly. Usually the way it works is that if they turn you down once, they kind of they just don't value what you have. Now, if there's like a major update and maybe it's a different job, something like that, then it might be worth doing. But usually the rule is that if you get rejected by a company or a specific recruiter for a position, usually going back to that recruiter doesn't really help, because there's someone that doesn't see a lot of value in you. Not necessarily. I mean, if it doesn't take a lot of effort, certainly you can. You got nothing to lose. But if it's a big deal, I would say don't worry about it. I have to get rolling and end the live stream in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to take the questions that people have here, and I'll just answer those. Okay, Dan Fleming, if the employer wants a reference letter, but my current employer is really not happy for leaving, what can I do? Okay, so what you can do is you can say, look, I don't know what you've told them so far, but usually the way this works is you can say, look, you cannot contact my current employer because my current employer doesn't know that I intend to leave, and I obviously want to keep that confidential. If they found out that I was leaving, there might be consequences for me. They might terminate me or something. I don't want to take the risk, so it's confidential. So therefore you can't contact them for anything. Unfortunately, you'll have to get your references. I'm going to give you the references, but you'll get them from my previous employers. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's perfectly normal, and that's quite a typical experience, actually. Okay. So if the employer wants a reference letter, now by letter, what do you mean by reference letter? Do you mean like a reference, meaning like a phone number or an email they can contact and call them up and say, like, how was this employee? Did you work with them? What were they like? Or do they want a letter of recommendation? Okay. If it's just a reference, then give them references from previous employers or coworkers or something like that. You might be able to swing a coworker at your current job, okay? If they know you're leaving and you're comfortable disclosing that to them and you feel they can keep a secret, you may be able to give them that. But if they want a boss, you just say, like, look, you can't get my current boss because they don't know that I'm leaving it, and I wish to keep that confidential. So unfortunately, I can't give you that. Okay? So those are your two options: a coworker at your current job or a previous boss. Preferably, you'd give them both, right? Here are my references. Here's 4 people: previous boss, current coworker, and then a personal reference, like, someone I've worked with over the years or that's known me for 20 years, something like that. Love Elvis Love. Is it okay to send a thank you email to your interviewer after an interview? Of course it is. I was dismissed 2.5 months into a job under the basis of no funding for the position, and I'm still jobless. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, you could send an email. Like of course you can. It's okay to say thank you. I would do it the same day, or absolute latest the next day, but not after that. I mean, you can if you haven't sent it yet, but it's much more effective. Okay. Whiplash. Hi, Bill. Can you change your chat from top chat to live chat? A lot of our comments, questions are being filtered out. Well, there's some, you have to be a subscriber for more than a day. I don't know if that's the issue. And I've also blocked, like it's got the filter on there to block like expletives and, things like that. So I'm not sure if that's what the issue is, but between the either of those. But I will look into top chat versus live chat. I'm not 100% familiar what the distinction is. So I will look into that for next time. Dan Fleming. Yes, phone number as a references. What if I cannot give any references at all? Well, then you need to figure out what you're doing. I mean, have you been to school? Like, you can't give references of teachers or anything like that? Like, you know what I mean? Does anybody know you? If this is your first career job and you don't have any previous bosses or previous coworkers, but you've been to school, then the references will have to be your teachers or maybe the principal at your school. Or someone like that. If this was university, your professors at university are probably good, right? Have you worked with anyone? Have you been part of any extracurricular activities? So you should, unless you've lived in a cave your entire life and you have no parents, you should be able to provide some kind of references. I have 20 years experience, but really nobody cares for me to give references. Okay. Just so you know, references are, all they do is, if you have a coworker, you say to your coworker, I'm applying for jobs. Could I use you as a reference? And, they'd say, okay. Say, all I need is your phone number. They're just going to ask you, like, if I was indeed employed here and, if you know who I am, basically. Okay, that's all. They don't have to like sing you praises or make some kind of personal representation about you. It's just to see if you're indeed an employee and, what type of work you did, and that's it. So, if they want it, that's what they're asking for. And if you can't even give that, I would focus on getting that. You need to have some kind of reference. If you can't provide any reference, that's a real red flag. That'll be taken as a real red flag. So, you got to come up with something. Even if you have a friend or something, if you've done sports, like, I don't know, your coach or somebody or a teammate on your sports team or something, I don't know. Yeah, they want me to give phone numbers to people so they can ask about me. Yeah, that's what a reference is. So yes, all they're going to do is they're going to call up. They say like, yes, I'm calling about, this person. My name is John. I'm calling from this company. And, I'm just calling, as I understand you're a reference for this person. I'm just wondering, how long have you known them? How long have you worked with them? What type of work did they do? What would you say about them? Are they like a reliable person? Do they show up to work on time? Has there been any issues that you're aware of with that employee? Something like that. And they say like, no, as far as I know, they're fine. They're, okay. I've worked with them for 2 years. They seem okay. Like, okay, that's all. Thank you very much. That's all it is, right? It's just very quick thing like that. Okay, I have to go. So the last question I'm going to take is this last one right here from Caleb. Caleb says, hi, Bill. No question, but a comment. Your support and guidance has enabled me to be the best in my recent interview. I got the job. Thank you. Excellent. Well, congratulations, Caleb. That's great to hear. You deserve it. And that's a great note to end on. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You guys are awesome. And I'm actually going to be here. I'm going to try to be on the live stream tomorrow. I'm going to do a new live stream, just a short little thing, maybe half an hour, talking about side hustles. One of the polls I did indicated that 75% of you guys want to do a side hustle or your own business on the side at some point. So that's like building businesses is what I do and what I'd love to talk about. I don't really get much of a chance to talk about it on this channel, but I'm going to try this tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. And if anybody's interested in that, show up at the same time and we'll talk about side hustles. Anyway, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I'll be back with the Q&A for job interviews and how to get a job, how to get hired next week at the same time. Thanks a lot. Take care.